Touchdown, Frantifa! Welcome, everybody, to the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. I am your host, Francesca Fiorentini. We're right in the middle of the Super Bowl. I don't care. Okay? Is Tom Brady crying yet? Wake me when Tom Brady cries. For those of you listening in the future or somewhere, where you're lucky enough to be insulated from football culture, welcome, congratulations, and give this podcast 5 stars on iTunes. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being in the chat. Make sure you are liking the stream. You're subscribed to the Bitchuation Room. I'm like, which of my many shows should you be subscribed to? The Bitchuation Room. Right here, right now, Franny Fio, subscribe on YouTube, like the stream, share the stream, do all the things. Thank you to all of my online bouncers like Todd Roy and Chuck Diesel. Fuck yeah. Holding it down, fighting the good fight. We've got such a good show. Nato Green is here, you guys. And Harsha Walia, an activist and a writer who's going to break down what is going on in India because Rihanna wants to know, and we shall abide. So we're going to talk all about the massive farm workers protest, what that means for the world, how we can all learn and be more like some of those striking badass farm workers right now. So I'm super excited to get into that. But while I have you here, I wanted to remind you all that this show had another show. This show had a bonus episode this last week with Alexis Goldstein, who works for Americans for Financial Reform. And she broke down her thoughts on GameStop and GameStop stocks, and what the future for like real financial reform is, what progressives and leftists should be fighting for when it comes to, slowly trying to just like monkey wrench and completely, make Wall Street collapse entirely. And so building blocks on that's a bonus episode. It was early and special for patrons, but now it is available to everybody. But I encourage you all to become a patron at patreon.com/bitchuationroom to get early access to a bunch of bonus episodes, or just that one at this point. But all of your support means so much. This show is just a little scrappy labor of love, as my producer Becca and I were groaning as we were getting ready. We're like, just getting very ready. So you're so part of this team, and thank you so much. $5, $10, $20, whatever you can afford. It really does make a difference. So thanks so much. And in that spirit, I would like to thank all of the people who have become a patron at $10 or more. By going to patreon.com/bitchuationroom. This is my little Patreon party with, of course, Kevin MacLeod's beautiful tune. Thank you, Austin C, Nate C, Jenya I, Mark D, Tom A, Patrick M, Bronwyn D, Michael D, Arn, Kristen I, Flower Dragon, Elizabeth G, and Juan Vasquez for upping and editing your pledge and becoming part of the innermost cabal of the Frantifa. Man, you're on the front lines, and thank you for that. Also, thank you to the big tippers who are tipping, and yes, you can still tip. TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App, Jenny S, Juan V again, and Stephen W. I love you guys. Thank you so much. And, ease up on the lentils in quarantine. Perfect. That's really for me to ease up on the lentils. It's mostly what I know how to cook, beans. And I'm a vegetarian. So it's just like, okay, let's do another chili or some kind of lentil stew. You guys, let's move into our bitching hour. Everyone in the comments, what are you bitching about today? It is Sunday, February 7th. It is Black History Month. That is good. Valentine's Day is coming up next week. I'm not sure what we're going to do for it. I'm open to suggestions. It will be a Sunday. So I'm really hitting the single sports hating demographic by going live at this time. But let's see. What was I going to bitch about? I was watching the Britney Spears documentary as I was getting ready, and I do want to a little bit bitch about that. I was like, I didn't know. I didn't know we were ruining someone's life when we endlessly slut and fat shamed her. And I was young. I don't. Fuck. This is our fault. No, I fucking love Britney Spears, man. I'm mad that she's now like a prisoner to her dad, and that sucks. So free Britney. This is a pro Britney, free Britney podcast. I want everyone to remember that. Okay, what I'm actually bitching about though is something that I think a lot of folks on the right and the left sometimes do, which is use the word woke as a way to basically punch down at feminists and anti-racist Black activists. Like, basically, the right is like, oh, the left is so woke. Everyone's so woke. And all that means is what they think it means is that you're trying to police them for saying the N-word, or you're trying to police them around being super in favor of police. Like, so the right loves to talk about this woke culture and the cancel culture. Mike Pompeo, you might remember him, former Secretary of State, just a giant, sort of hate in a suit, like just trying to start all kinds of wars. He had a tweet a while ago, and I just have been meaning to talk about it and bitch about it, where he basically calls out wokeness and political correctness. And then, of course, multiculturalism, which is just Nazi shit. Like, anytime you're like, and the problem is multiculturalism, it's just Nazi shit. But at least he was specific. A lot of people just say, like, wokeism. And it's like, you mean, like, general diversity and, like, being cognizant of people's pronouns and sexualities and ethnicities and religion? You mean that? Do you mean that? And then I will say that the left often also, like, oh, everyone's so over woke right now. Just, that's not specific enough. If you want to say what I think you want to say that there's purity politics. You don't like purity politics. And that's important, right? Like, we shouldn't always police one another on being perfect beings, right? Sometimes we get stuff wrong. Sometimes we're learning, we're understanding. But like, don't weaponize the word woke, because it ultimately just sounds like you're mad at people of color. And it sounds like you're mad that there's been a massive movement against police brutality, for Black lives. And it's a slang term that also originated in the Black community as Black slang, as like most slang has. So just careful with the word like woke or bashing it. That's my little PSA. That's what I'm bitching about, you guys. That's what I think we need to hear. Fuck Mike Pompeo and Tucker Carlson and all these other, like, your wokeness, your woke apocalypse. Good. Sit in it. Sit in it. Sit in a multicultural space and melt slowly. And with that, I'm going to bring in my comedian for the pod. You know him as a union organizer, a comic, a man currently waiting to be named official comedian laureate of San Francisco. And you can watch his series Laughter Against the Machine on Means TV, and his comedy albums, The Whiteness Album and The Nato Green Party, are available on Bandcamp. Please welcome to the stream, Mr. Nato Green.
Hello. How are we doing?
What's up, Nato? How are you?
Cheers, everybody. Hey, good evening. My drink tonight is called Board Shorts, if anyone's wondering. Still waiting for that Libra and co-sponsorship. Anyway, I think that I didn't watch the Britney Spears documentary. Did it talk about? I feel like she's a canary in the coal mine, if you will, on a certain issue, which is that part of the circumstances that Britney Spears is wrestling with is a conservatorship. She's been conserved by the courts, and those of us who live in cities are currently, that like conservatorship is presented as a solution to the urban crisis of homelessness and mental illness. And so we are encouraged by reactionary neoliberal politicians to conflate homelessness and mental illness. And the solution is to lock them all up and conserve them in the way that Britney Spears was conserved, and then force them to do residencies in Las Vegas at casinos, performing their greatest hits, to while other people profit from the riches of their mental illness. So I hope more people will learn about the limitations of conservatorship as a result of Britney Spears. Anyway, what I'm bitching about is that I don't care about sports, obviously, and so the if I the team that I'm rooting for is the international working class, quite frankly, and I think this might be our season. What's
tipping you off to that?
The India, the protests, and people are blockading shit all over the world, and the workers walking off the jobs.
Biden isn't terrible.
Biden is slightly less, terrible, I guess. So Biden can be moved by protest, which I enjoy. But because I don't care about the Super Bowl. Super Bowl Sunday is, among other things, the best shopping day of the year, and I'm annoyed that because of COVID, I can't hit the outlet malls, man. It's a bummer.
That's so true. Ooh, next year.
Next year, that the Livermore outlet malls are like a ghost town on Super Bowl Sunday. It's the best time to go pick up some Le Creuset, cookware, and some.
I bet the sales are good, right? Because
Yeah,
they're trying to get people out.
And some discounted Echo shoes or what have you, the kinds of things that some Johnson & Murphy shoes, the kind of some Nato Green shit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I was going to introduce you as the man slowly turning into a corduroy elbow patch, but I was nice.
You know what? Recently someone was like, "Oh, you should come do the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland." And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to do that, except that if I did that, there is a 100% chance that I will come back looking dressed 100%, fantastic.
You'll start smoking a pipe.
I'll be dressed like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them all the time. I would be totally ready to just be Mr. Tweed Suit guy. I could be that guy easily. I could totally pull that off.
Yeah, I know. You're like, no, I have to decline. Thank you, but it's for my own.
Yeah, all of my ticket sale income would go towards buying a tweed vest, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
yeah, I think though that the one group of people who are not going to sleep even despite a pandemic are Asian moms are still out at the outlets. Believe you me. Are you kidding me? They're not going to miss out on Le Creuset sales.
Sure.
So you call my mom up. You guys go down.
Should I take your mom shopping?
Take my mom shopping, please. She needs it. She's almost got her second vaccine. It's very exciting. Well, Nato, it's so good to have you here. And we have 4 very important stories to get to this week. And are you ready for them?
Sure.
Okay.
Drop the beat.
Let's do it. This is the week where... Oh, so much happened this week, but I'm picking out 4 little gems for you guys because there's some fun stuff. I love that not everything is awful these days, which is okay, there's some fun things we can talk about. But one of those things is that this was the week where former President Donald Trump pulled a "You can't fire me, I quit" on the Screen Actors Guild after he found out they were holding meetings to discuss booting him from the union. And in one of his first public statements since being booted from the White House and losing his Twitter account, he wrote, let me pull up the graphic. He wrote, I write to you today regarding the so-called disciplinary committee hearing aimed at revoking my union membership. Who cares? That's the first line, is who cares?
It's who cares exclamation point, not who cares question mark. Which is because it is a question. Who cares?
Well, I'm not familiar with your work, Screen Actors Guild. I'm very proud of my work on movies such as Home Alone 2, Zoolander, and Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, and television shows including The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Saturday Night Live, and of course, one of the most successful shows in television history, The Apprentice, to just name a few. Well, I'm not. How catty is this man? The cattiest person.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just so you know, all of those parts are parts in which he played himself. You guys, I don't know if you can consider that acting. Like every day I wake up and play myself. No cameras around, excluding this show, but like I'm just myself. But do I get access to a healthcare plan and bargaining power just for being myself? Hell no. Should I? Yes.
I really thought your performance on Thursdays was not your strongest work as yourself. So I went on IMDb to see about Trump's acting credits. Trump has 26 acting credits, in quotes, of which 23 involve playing Donald Trump. 23 out of 26. The other 3 are for playing Forbes cover billionaire in an animated video short called Horrorween, VIP patron in a movie called 54, and Waldo's dad in the 1994 remake of The Little Rascals. So that's the extent of his acting oeuvre.
So essentially just, Ronald Rumpf, like the same guy. The same guy over and over again. I was watching actually the entire, like a back-to-back clips of every cameo he's ever had. And I was like, oh my God, he had it so good. Like everything was fine when he could be president. Like, or when he wasn't president, we could just be an actor or just be like a television billionaire. Like what was wrong with that? Everything was so safe. It like actually made me miss the old Donald Trump. And I think we should have just fabricated a new show. It could have been, it could have been like, instead of the West Wing, like the Weimar Wing. Instead we got that, the real deal. Also, like, he doesn't need union perks. He's like the last person who needs a union perk. Like, what's he gonna do if he like stages a walkout? Like gonna walk out on his own persona? You can't. Anyway? I'm done.
Well, and obviously, he's complaining that the union didn't do anything for him, and which demonstrates that he also doesn't understand what unions do, because what the union did for him was for those roles in which he played himself in, for example, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he was paid SAG minimums, at least, which, are not bad. He doesn't need the money, but that's a different problem.
Yeah.
Right. So,
they protected his rights.
They protected his rights. And there are lots of people who didn't, who really appreciated that, who depended on that. And then after that, SAG went ahead and voted to expel him anyway. They were like, oh, you resigned? Well, not only we're going to vote anyway. We're not going to kick you out. We're going to forbid you from ever rejoining. And so if you're not, what it means is that like these things that happened in the past where like Wall Street money never sleeps would be like, let's get Donald Trump to play Donald Trump for this, that in the future, no one can ever do that. Do you know what I mean? Like there was that Republican Senator Fred Thompson who for years would just turn up on like episodes of The Good Wife playing Republican Senator Fred Thompson or whatever. That like Trump can never do that again. Like no one can ever stunt cast Donald Trump to just show up and deliver 3 lines and be a dick and rape somebody. Because
they're all SAG.
Because it's SAG work, and he's been banned from the union, and so he can't come back. Even if they relaunch The Apprentice, he can't walk across the screen and say, "What's up, everybody?" He can only be an extra.
Oh my God. I mean, he's just going to be in Bannon's 10th movie about the Clintons or whatever.
Yeah, he's going to have to do non-union productions and, go to to be on like local television in North Korea or something.
Yeah, he's basically going to be me on the internet. Working for them likes, everybody. I hope you're liking the stream. Moving on to our next story. This was the week where, I'm sure y'all heard, freshman Congress member Marjorie Taylor Greene, or the thing that happens when the Chardonnay runs out, was stripped of the ability to serve on any House committees by a vote of 230 to 199 over her comments about pick anything. Killing Nancy.
Anything she's ever said.
everything she said. Killing Nancy Pelosi, Jewish space lasers, Obama being a Muslim, what else? The election being stolen. But she has spoken, and in a press conference had this to say, that she wasn't really fazed by the entire "you can't actually do your job" thing.
Going forward, I've been freed. I do. I feel freed because you know what's happening on these committees? You see, we have basically a tyrannically controlled government right now. The Democrat.
Yes. She's been freed from doing the work of a Congress member, just like the internet message boards freed her from doing any thinking. You see how this works? Like even though she does CrossFit, 8chan is clearly doing all the heavy lifting in her brain. I'm just really thankful that in that speech she didn't use like a "free at last" MLK quote, because I feel like that's where it was going. She was about to do that.
I feel bad about making fun of her. It feels, as a comedian, it feels like punching down. And also like, you know, as a political comic, when Trump was going to leave, when Trump lost the election, people, you know, some people were like, well, you know, your political comedy is going to be over. And I was like, no, I remember people said that when George Bush was out. And I was like, don't worry, the universe will provide. Et voila, Michelle Bachmann. And here
Yes.
we are. But this stripping her of her committees for her bullshit is not a good punishment. So as the punishment for being a violent racist anti-Semite inciting sedition, your punishment is going to fewer meetings. Like, that doesn't seem that bad to me. The other thing is that when she talks about being freed, I can't help but think about Obi-Wan Kenobi when Darth Vader kills him in Star Wars, and he says, "Strike me down, and I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine."
Yes.
And then in the entire rest of the series, does nothing to indicate that. Like he doesn't at no point after being struck down and allegedly becoming more powerful than Darth Vader, if he had said, "Strike me down, and I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine," by which I mean occasionally, every once in a while, talking to Luke in his brain. That's all I'm going to do that is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Darth Vader would have been like, yeah, sure, I can take that risk. So that when she talks about being
good
free,
threat.
Yeah, cool. That doesn't.
You're so right about that. This is like, also, it's all he does is say, "Use the Force, Luke," and it's like,
Force.
Bitch, I know.
Yeah.
What the fuck else do you think I was going to do?
I put a Post-it on my desktop that said "Use the Force." Like, don't you have something better to say than what I already wrote on my Post-it? That's right here. It's on the dashboard of my X-Wing fighter to use the Force. You're not helping, Ben.
No. But she did have, actually, it's funny because we're mocking it, but like you said, we're living in their satire at this point. Because she tweeted something pretty much like almost verbatim exactly what we're saying, which is, "I woke up early this morning, literally laughing, thinking about what a bunch of morons the Democrats, plus 11 Republicans who voted also to strip her of her responsibilities, are giving for someone like me, what a bunch of morons the Democrats are for giving someone like me free time. In this Democrat tyrannical government, conservative Republicans have no say on committees anyway. Oh, this is gonna be fun." Oh my God. Like, I actually think that's a real threat. Like, the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene is in Congress is because white middle-class women have way too much time on their hands anyway. Like, somehow tennis and needlepoint and church just don't cut it anymore. So now it's QAnon and Jewish laser beams causing wildfires. Like, come get your Karens, people. Okay, check in on them. Introduce them to new hobbies. Idle hands are Marjorie's workshop, is what I'm trying to say.
Just cut her loose on Nextdoor with all the other white ladies. To be like, "I think there's a black in the neighborhood," or whatever.
There's that homeless person again. That was the one time I logged on Nextdoor and I was like, never again. It was just like, well, the homeless is back. You're like, oh God. Fucking stop.
Well, and also, so I literally woke up laughing. Either that's literally woke up laughing? Can you imagine what would be involved in like, like that's not healthy. Like, not even like, I need some water. Anyway, ha 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 ha. Like,
it's so, it's scary. I do not know what she's going to get up to. But more conspiracies to come for sure. Oh, Marjorie, the gift keeps on giving. Meanwhile, we have other news, but still in the same milieu of MAGA who've lost their minds.
okay.
This was the week where CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, was passed around right-wing media like a legal hot potato as he continued to claim that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. OAN and Newsmax, or knockoff Fox, are trying to thread that needle of appealing to their MAGA base while avoiding being sued by companies like Dominion Voting Systems, which has already sued members of Trump's legal team, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, to the tune of $1.3 billion each. Lindell recently purchased a 2-hour time slot on OAN to air his docufilm called Absolute Proof, in which he presents no proof. Instead, he presents a bunch of theories about servers in Frankfurt, Chinese-controlled voting machines, dead people voting, all which had to be prefaced by OAN with this very, very shook disclaimer.
This program is not the product of OAN's reporting. The views, opinions, and claims expressed in this program by Mr. Lindell and other guests, presenters, producers, or advertisers are theirs and theirs alone and are not adopted or endorsed by OAN or its owners. In particular, OAN does not adopt or endorse any statements or opinions in this program regarding the following entities or people: U.S. Dominion, Inc., and any related entities. Smartmatic USA Corp., Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger, or Gabriel Sterling.
May contain traces of nuts, horse meat, and lies.
Look, Francesca, I get it. Like, this MyPillow guy is annoying and a jackass, but also I love it, and I think we're not looking on the bright side.
Tell me.
If on November 9th, 2016, you had told me that the regime of President Donald Trump would end with his only last supporters being Rudy Giuliani, who at this point is a Horcrux in human form, and the MyPillow guy, I would say, A, that's great that he is so isolated and alone, and B, what is MyPillow? Because if you had locked all the comedy writers in a room and said, you have to write a joke about Donald Trump's last proxy on the news with a what's next type joke, like, that'd be crazy. What's next? And set up the most obscure and irrelevant person, none of them would have come up with anything close to as good as the MyPillow guy. Most of us don't even know his name. Please don't tell me. I don't want to know. There is no one, not even the most deranged and illiterate Proud Boy, who thinks this MyPillow guy has some valid points. Our reality show, white supremacist rapist president being defended by a pillow mogul, that is lyrical, historic, poignant comedy. It is like a Shakespearean comedy. As they said in Twelfth Night, dost thou think because thou art virtuous, there shall be no more cakes and pillows. The biggest question is why David Hogg of the Parkland fame is in a fit of fury at the MyPillow guy's offenses, decided that the best response was to start a competing pillow company.
Yes.
Boss Hogg, there are easier ways to make a living. If you want to put MyPillow business out of business, if you want to put MyPillow out of business, did you know that MyPillow isn't even the most popular brand of pillow? You could have just done a boycott. You could have been like, hey, everybody, according to the New York Times Wirecutter, Sleep Number is one of the many better pillow options for you.
Right.
Obviously,
Wamsutta Dreamscape is my favorite, or Dream Maker. Anyhow,
totally.
Keep going. So
obviously,
good.
one of the lesser known forms of PTSD experienced by survivors of school massacres is not being able to remember that there are multiple brands of pillow to choose from.
Okay, Marjorie. All right, there.
Yeah.
Stop harassing a survivor. But but he's a 20-year-old at Harvard. Like, if he wasn't starting a startup, like, would he actually be? Would he exist? I feel like that's every 20-year-old at Harvard's goal. He is starting a pillow company together with a software engineer, who's another, like, I don't know how you could be 13, you could be 30 kind of vibe of a dude. Hogg says, this time it'll be union made, have an emphasis on supporting progressive causes, and not attempt a white supremacist overthrow of the United States government so you can sleep at night. And I'm in it for just that slogan. Won't attempt a white supremacist coup so you can sleep at night. I love that. I wonder if it will be called Not My Us Pillow.
I think it'll be called Historical Memory Foam.
Property is Theft Pillow. I don't know. I'm trying to do a spin-off of my collective ownership. Okay, we've run this into the ground, guys. Put some suggestions for what David Hogg should name his pillow company in the comments, and thank you so much. Moving on to our final story, which I'm still trying to get my head around. My God, this was the week where the military in Myanmar decided to coup the hand that's fed them for many, many years by overthrowing leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Suu Kyi was a human rights activist turned human rights abuser. She turned her own military against the Rohingya people and essentially allowed them to commit mass genocide against that Muslim minority population in Myanmar. The best part of this story, from what I'm reading, is that the military is charging Suu Kyi with illegally importing walkie-talkies. I didn't write anything for that, but if it's not genocide, NATO, it's the illegal importation of the walkie-talkie.
Is it a tariff issue? Are walkie-talkies banned in Myanmar? So as a result of their coup, Aung San Suu Kyi is back under house arrest, but it's COVID. Fucking, aren't we all under house arrest right now? So I wonder how her bread baking is going and what she thinks of the crown. So it's it feels like a remix, like it's a military coup. A lady won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990. Under house arrest, and she's still doing her hits. Like, she's just doing the hits in the year of our Lord 2021, like Paula Abdul touring Opposites Attract, which was also big in 1990. And the protesters in Myanmar are throwing up three fingers like it's the Hunger Games. And as you said, she's a human rights champion who may also be responsible for genocide. She's a Nobel Peace Prize recipient who may also be responsible for genocide. A lot like Henry Kissinger. So, but unlike Henry Kissinger, she was quite a snack when she was younger. So, I
think Henry Kissinger's always remained a snack. Like he literally looks like a snack. Like he's packaged. Look at it. I remember, I think he visited Trump, and like, I'm like, do his feet hit the ground? They don't. They just wee.
He does. Henry Kissinger does look like an undercooked scone.
This episode's going to be called Kissinger's a Snack, though. And with that was the week where, give it up, clap it up. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for your super chats, John L., David Lucero, Kimberly McNaught, Yay, Think King, and Carissa De Kaiser. Thank you so much. On Twitch, Aaron Gets Gud says, Valentine's Day? You mean discount chocolates Eve? Totally. Think King, thank you for the super chat. I hate Tom Brady. Me too. He's a MAGA supporter, like clean cut white boy. I don't know. He's always winning. Except last year, didn't he cry? I just want that moment. I think they're gonna win though. Is he on the winning? Anywho, I don't care. On Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lil Mac on YouTube says, well, you can't prove that there are not space lasers. NATO, you want to take this one?
Yes. As a Jew, let me say that if we had space lasers, do you think that we would waste valuable space laser resources starting wildfires in the Hollywood Hills? of all the places that we could point our space lasers, it would not be at fucking Jew Beverly Hills.
At the thing you run.
Yeah. So I tell you what, though,
hilarious.
if we had space lasers, there would be a lot fewer Marjorie Taylor Greenes in this world. So that's how you know that we don't have space lasers.
I love how that argument, which is so funny, is like someone on 8chan is totally like, nah, they all live in California. Why would they do that though? Like that's like a Nazi's actually making that argument right now. So silly. Todd Roy, thank you so much. Don't ruin Star Wars by saying Marjorie Taylor Greene in the same sentence. You just wrote it in the same sentence. So I love Beagles. Biggest disclaimer ever. Absolutely. Oh my God. It was longer, right? We just started in the middle. It was like a minute and a half of a disclaimer. Names for pillow company. Thank you. Our Pillow, Everyone's Pillow, which Tanish, I don't know if you want. Oh yeah, you can have Everyone's Pillow. This is everyone. Yeah. The Better Pillow. Okay, that's good. Dax Alvarez.
Pillows.
Dax Alvarez says Chairman Pillow with a silhouette pic of Bernie and his mittens. I like that. Chairman Pillow is a pretty good name for a pillow. Right there, that's Chairman Pillow. Right? Thank you for your service. All right, you guys. Hey, did you know we have a Patreon? Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Become a patron today. $5, $1. It doesn't matter. It means a lot. Also, you can tip the show, TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. But let's get into it. We're talking about the massive protests in India, why they happened, why they continue, and what they mean for the world and, solidarity movements in the future. This is the Sitch. And joining us for the Sitch, she is a Sikhi Punjabi feminist activist and author who is organized in the grassroots migrant justice, anti-capitalist, feminist, abolitionist, and anti-imperialist movements for the past 2 decades. That's how I know her from years and years and years ago. It's very exciting to have her. And she has a new book, Border and Rule, Global Migration, Capitalism, and the Rise of Racist Nationalism, which is available now. Please welcome Harsha Walia.
Hi.
Harsha, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I was just laughing in your back room.
I saw you. I was like, someone liked the Kissinger joke. Thank you.
Yeah.
Harsha, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. Staying away from the Super Bowl.
I know nothing of the Super Bowl. I'm across the border. We do not watch
safe from the Super Bowl. Very, very safe. But Harsha, so the protests that have been going on in India that have started back in November, and they've been met with massive amounts of violence. Well, first of all, they're like unprecedentedly huge, massive amounts of turnout, also a lot of violence, disappearances, arrests, the blackouts in terms of internet access that the Modi government has rained down on protesters in the regions that are protesting. This week, Rihanna tweeted about it and Greta Thunberg tweeted about it. And Rihanna was like, why aren't we talking about this? And then, of course, like crazy Hindu nationalists in her mentions are like, how dare you? And all she was like, well, let's just talk about this. But I know you've written some about it, and I wanted to ask you, what are the specific laws that farmers are rising up against? What has happened? Why did it set this off?
Yeah, there was three laws that were introduced in the Indian legislature, in the midst of the pandemic. And these 3 laws essentially just are market reforms, more neoliberal market reforms into the agricultural sector in India. And they do a couple of things. One is just kind of privatize the entire sector to a greater degree, which makes it harder for farmers to subsist. Most of Indian farmers are subsistence farmers. They're not major farm owners. And also one of the significant things that it did was to remove the regulations of what's called minimum support pricing. So what that is basically give farmers a guaranteed income through state subsidies. So basically, it was 3 laws that increasingly make it harder for farmers to earn a livelihood under the guise of reform. But basically, that reform is just, larger corporations, bigger companies being able to come in and gain a foothold in the Indian agricultural sector.
So if I could just reflect back to you what I just heard as someone who doesn't know a lot about this, what I think you just said is that most Indian farmers are subsistence farmers, which the meaning of subsistence farmers is that you only make enough to barely subsist on, and the government decided that was too much.
Basically, yeah.
And that that was too much, and they wanted to be able to pay farmers less than they need to subsist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Subsist.
Yeah.
Subsist. And to remove any minimal income. So to have nothing.
And just in case folks didn't know, I'm reading, this is from Reuters, about 1.3 billion the agriculture sector employs half of India's population of 1.3 billion. And unrest is among 150 million landowning farmers. This is like millions, tens and tens of millions of farmers. It's not like the US where it's like, oh, we're lifting some of the corn subsidies, and then like the farms that are left, which there are fewer and fewer, they've been consolidated, like they get mad. It's far more massive than that.
I feel like Americans can't even comprehend the scale. Like when people protest in India, people fucking protest in India. And it's like, oh yeah, it was a small protest. There were only 75 million people there. And people are like, that's more people than have ever protested anything all combined in the history of the United States.
Yeah, what about the Women's March?
Yeah. That was like 2 million,
Yeah, and the major day of action and Bharat Bandh, which was shut down India, was 250 million people. So that was the largest single day. But millions of people continue to surround New Delhi, which is the capital of India. So essentially, the entire border of New Delhi has been shut down. So all of the roads and the highways that go into the city have been shut down by farmers who have basically occupied every entry into the capital city.
And was there an organization that people were building on, or was this pretty spontaneous?
It's a bit of both. Like I think any mass resistance movement. So for months and months in the lead up to the organizing, especially in Punjab, Punjab is one of the main states where farmers are a majority of the population. There was over 31 trade unions who were involved in base building and building power in Punjab. But also there was a lot of spontaneous organizing, and we see that ongoing now, right? The kind of caravans that keep coming and the tractors that keep coming into New Delhi really are quite spontaneous, of young people and elders. And a lot of villages have basically mandated that every family will continue to send one person to the protests in Delhi.
Wow.
And this is, because right now the tactic of the government, of course, is to stall and to see how long people will wait it out, especially in the winter months. And so every family has said that they will, on an ongoing basis, continue to send one member of their family.
So like when the village mandates that everyone, every family sends somebody, but that doesn't include like during brunch, right?
There would be no brunch without them.
Yes, we don't do brunch.
Nobody goes back to brunch.
Yeah. There's no Sunday brunch on the farm.
Yeah, they took their cues. I wanted to ask you, Harsha, so like what's the broader like the historic importance of farmers to India's economy? And this isn't the first time they've been put in the crosshairs of like transnational capitalism. And I know that in like the late 90s and early 2000s, when globalization was really taking hold, that they were also targeted and had to fight back. So can you just sort of situate us like where we're at in this long struggle?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And, that is one of the key differences between the United States and what's happening in India, of course, is that, there hasn't been that kind of capture of capitalism to the same degree. And so 86% of farmers in India are small landholding farmers or farm workers, right? So they're not major capital ventures or major corporations. And this is a long struggle. And, you know, we could go really far back into the British Raj and the period of British Empire. But really, even just going back 30, 40 years, the Industrial Revolution or kind of industrial farming revolution in India was called the Green Revolution, which is like the worst name, right? Because it was the opposite of green. It was completely, polluting, full of pesticides, and was bringing in industrial farming into India. And this was like a global template of how to capture small farm owning land holdings. And so the Green Revolution began in the 70s. It was kind of the time of when the World Bank was like, we're going to bring capitalism to the whole world and, to newly freed post-colonial states. And so the Green Revolution was a disaster. It brought in monocropping, brought in evil corporations like Monsanto, polluted the water, and has led to an epidemic of farmer suicides that people often hear about in the news. And even until 2019, over 10,000 farmers in India every single year committed suicide as a result of mounting debt. That's like about 28 people every single day. And this is, a crisis that oftentimes we hear about as like, just one of misery, without really looking at the reasons of why there is such an epidemic, why people are so desperate that they're killing themselves, and really the crisis of debt. And in Punjab, which I mentioned earlier, so Punjab is a state where Punjab actually literally means 5 rivers. That's what Punjab means, 5 rivers. And the state of the 5 rivers is the breadbasket for all of India. It's a state that produces over 60% of Indian staples, like rice and wheat.
Right.
And in the Punjab is the epicenter of farmer suicides, and where farmers are indebted at a rate of about 2% of the rest of the country. So really farming has been, there's, the kind of stronghold of capitalism to try to indebt farmers, to try to, bring in GMOs, to bring in pesticides. All of this is really the long arc of the agricultural crisis in India.
And who's motivating these policy changes, this legislation? Is it a homegrown is it the homegrown ruling class in India, or is the World Bank or multinational corporations involved too?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. And that's what's really ironic about.
Are you saying the world is complicated? I need either or answers.
They're both, right? They're both. And one of the things that's really ironic about Modi, who's a Hindu fascist, is he tries to present himself as this kind of parochial right-wing nationalist, right? But similar to Trump, he's actually one of the world's most business-friendly politicians. And, so there are local companies like Ambani and Adani, who are some of the world's richest people, who are, there really isn't such a thing, I don't think, as like the local elite, right? They're transnational by their very nature. But absolutely, the US has for many decades been aggressively pushing at the World Trade Organization for countries like India to remove their trade protections on agriculture, to remove subsidies. And so it's a mix of these forces of transnational capital, which are arguably never really local.
Wait, are you saying
Nato, no more rhetoricals? Wait a minute.
Go for it.
We didn't have anything to do with this. America, we don't, whatever. World Trade Organization hasn't been relevant since it won. I wanted to ask you, though, so you talked a little bit about Punjab. And given that Modi is a Hindu nationalist, we've seen the rise of Hindu nationalist violence under his rule. And given that a lot of the farm workers are Sikh, how does this interplay with that sort of like religious and Hindu nationalist racism and violence?
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that a lot of us in the Sikh community have been witnessing, especially in the last few months, is, on Twitter and in social media, is this call for repeat 1984. And that's very chilling, because 1984 is the year that marks the Sikh genocide in India. And 1984 was shortly after the assassination of the fascist Indira Gandhi. And what was unleashed after that was majoritarian violence on Sikhs, organized and sanctioned by the state, where, one Sikh was killed every single minute. There was over 40,000 extrajudicial killings. Estimated 60,000 people were disappeared. And one of the first implementations of anti-terror legislation in India was in the Punjab. So a massive prolonged campaign of counterinsurgency. And so this was actually under the then Congress Party, who was in power, which is, kind of the equivalent of the Democrats, if we were to make those comparisons for people listening in. And, the BJP is the equivalent of the Republicans, right? But really for minoritized communities, the reality is the same when it comes to that kind of racial violence, that kind of religious violence. And absolutely under the BJP, who very much overtly believe in a Hindu Raj, which is the rule of Hindus, believe in Hindu majoritarianism, have an explicit agenda of annihilating Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Adivasi, indigenous people, Dalit, caste oppressed people. This is a frightening vision of the future. And, India is home to the RSS, which is the largest volunteer paramilitary organization in the world, where people voluntarily are part of a paramilitary organization of over 100,000 people in any single region of India, not even the entire part of India.
But did they storm the Capitol with
did
faith?
they? Yeah. When Modi's out, they absolutely will, right? And Modi is far more dangerous than Trump, truly, and has the backing of a highly armed and disciplined paramilitary force that Trump, frankly, just never had and won't. Just doesn't exist in the United States to that degree. So Hindutva violence is, on par with Zionist violence in terms of the occupation of Kashmir. In terms of, there's never been a single year when India has not been at war across its borders. And, that's something that's hard for people to understand because most Americans, I think of India as like, I don't know, peace, love, pray, or yoga or chai or whatever.
Sure.
And it really kind of erases the reality of that entrenched state violence.
Peace, love, nationalism.
Yeah. And, yoga and all of that, which is deliberate import or export rather, right? Like that's Modi's thing, is to have launched an international day for yoga.
More like Namaste, am I right? I'm sorry. I'll clean myself out. Goodbye.
First of all, Namaste is definitely on a white girl's t-shirt somewhere.
Somebody has that tattooed in their lower back.
For sure.
Someone named Megan.
Probably. I mean, I think what's really interesting though is that they're not able to ram through these laws because it seems like Parliament is negotiating with farmers. There's like major farm workers unions that are involved there because it's such a huge block of voters as well. So there's a huge amount of political power, which is interesting. And it just made me curious, is voting obligatory in India, or is it,
No.
It's not, it's optional.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
is it mandatory anywhere?
Australia.
Oh yeah. In Argentina, where I used to live, which I will talk about all the time.
Australia, and what isn't it obligatory in Brazil? Maybe
it's obligatory in a lot of countries. What's interesting though is that when it's obligatory, you always have like a populace. No matter who's in power, they're trying to get poor people to vote for you. And it can be as direct as like, here's a sandwich, get on the bus and vote for me. I mean, it's that coercive. It's not good.
Look,
here's a sandwich, get on the bus. Definitely happens.
Yeah,
that would work on me, depending on the sandwich. Some sandwiches, I'd be like, okay, I'll vote for fascism.
I'll pass. What's in it?
Yeah.
What's in it? Almond butter? Okay. What about like lessons for the war, like lessons for farm workers elsewhere, or lessons for like international solidarity? Like what does this mean for the rest of the world? And what we can learn from it. I know that's like a huge question, but
yeah. I mean, and thank you for that question.
Quick follow-up question just to tack onto that. What is everything?
Yeah. What's the world? What's
the
global?
world? I was just going to say, what is the world?
How? Okay, go ahead.
No, and I appreciate that question because, I feel so amped and so deeply inspired. And I think, a few things. One is, of course, just the scale of organization, right? Like to have millions of people showing up in solidarity, to have that many trade unions. The other thing is just it's perhaps less visible, but is so needed, is the logistical infrastructure to sustain millions of people on a front line of a blockade, right? Like that is no easy fit, and that's just no easy feat. And one of the things that's really central there, and this speaks
is there a GoFundMe I can give you
Yeah,
to give to towards like a
Fund millions of
catapult
people.
outside of New Delhi? This is part of the siege.
They definitely need a catapult. They don't
Yeah.
need pizza. Everyone's got
Yeah, they don't
food, I
got-
think.
They got food, and that's the thing, right? So it's the food is organized around the principle of seva, and seva is the Sikh principle of service. And I've always believed that the principle of seva and the Sikh social organization around a gurdwara is one of the most vibrant examples of socialism that we have in the world today, which is that anyone can walk into a gurdwara and you will be fed. And if you need a place to stay, you will have a place to stay. And this is not small, right? This is literally, they're doing it for millions of people, including people who are not farmers, right? So kids who are on the street, who are homeless and or street involved, are now part of these encampments because everyone gets a tent, everyone gets food, everyone gets to be part of this. And I think for me, that's one of the greatest lessons is like, how do we actually figure out how to live together? How do we figure out how to like do this for one another and sustain it?
So it's the Chaz of New Delhi.
Yeah, it's amazing. They even got like, winterized tents in the middle of winter for elders. Like,
wow.
And, foot massages and it's incredible. So, and also
I'm there. Why didn't you lead with that? Like, how do we get international solidarity?
Yes.
There are foot massages.
You need foot massages for your elders who've been walking for, 3 days to get there.
And be careful because there's, they're definitely like righteous white liberals on the feed who are like, these Indians, I read about Kama Sutra and now they're talking about foot massages. I gotta go.
They're doing Kama Sutra on the front lines.
Yeah, I read about that. So can you, for those of us, which is probably like 99.9% of Americans who don't understand Indian domestic politics, like, are the farmers protest, are they going it alone? Are there other forces in Indian civil society or the left? Is there an opposition to Modi outside of the farmers? Like, do you see this as like a farmer only type of thing? Or is this sort of like the beginning of, something that could have more far-reaching implications? And I know I asked you an either-or question, and I really need an either-or answer. So no complexity right now, please.
I think it is most definitely wider. It's a farmers' protest where lots of different social movements have showed up. One of the main slogans is Kisan Majdoor Ekta Zindabad, which is farmers and farm workers, unified, because again, so many people who work on the land don't own the land that they work on. But also other workers from other surrounding industrial
Why is
zones.
the slogan "farmers and foot massages"? I feel like that
should have been that, right?
Put that on the sign. Come on, make a flag.
Yeah, farmers with foot massages.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And there's the feminist movement has been present, and there's been a number of days that have highlighted the struggle of women farm workers rather than the kind of assumption or stereotype of male farm workers. And also this builds on, really significant protests last year against the CAA, which was a Citizenship Act amendment, which was deeply
Creative Artists Agency. They're very big in show business.
Alyssa Milano.
Yeah. They're a big problem. They control a lot of who gets TV shows.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which is a deeply anti-Muslim bill.
Yeah.
And so totally the same. So it's building on resistance to Hindutva especially, and to the convergence between Hindutva and capitalism. And of course, this is happening while Kashmir continues to be under occupation. So all of these are, the struggle for workers, the struggle for farmers, the struggle for Muslims in India, and the struggles for sovereignty and freedom for Kashmiris. These are all kind of converging over the past 2 years in an incredibly powerful way.
Wow. Thank you so much for this, Harsha. I wanted to pivot a little and just ask you one question, which is a big question, but you have this book. They're all the questions are giant, but you have this book coming out, Border and Rule, Global Migration Capitalism and the Rise of Racist Nationalism, which has a lot to do with what we've been talking about going on in India, but also you have a chapter or part of a chapter that was printed in The Intercept, and you talk about like the border machinery in the United States and like the border patrol, ICE, starting under Clinton and moving through the, war on terror, Bush years, and then being implemented in full by Obama, as the deporter in chief. And then you've got Biden, who's, trying to pull some of that back, just a little bit of it, right? A moratorium on deportations for 100 days. And this week was a week where ICE basically just ignored that completely. Like, nope, we're going to keep on deporting people. Sorry. What do you think that means? Like, what does that tell us about this problem and how big it's become?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that, the Biden administration didn't really step in and intervene in any significant way until there was mass pressure, including from immigrant rights organizations. And then ICE actually pulled back a number of deportation flights. But of course, ICE is one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the United States. Its budget actually outpaces all other law enforcement agencies combined. So this buildup that Biden's trying to roll back, a big part of it was actually his own party, especially with Clinton and Obama. And I think in the coming years, there will be what we saw under Clinton and Obama, which is this kind of attempt at compromise with the immigrant rights movements, right? Saying like, I'll give you the DREAM Act, but then I'm going to step up enforcement against immigrants with criminal records. So those kinds of concessions, I think, are going to really be playing out over the coming years. And, that's going to be a challenge for the movement to actually say no, right? Like no one left behind, no one is illegal, not one more deportation. And I think that's always been the hallmark of neoliberal centrists, right? Is that kind of center, the politics of the center and forced concessions.
No matter how far to the right we've been dragged by whatever, Trump or Bush or whatever, it's like, well, we're still starting from there. And, centrists love that shit.
I feel like the politics on that issue has moved. Like once, under Obama, like it was like comprehensive immigration reform was off the table and the DREAM Act was like, a stretch. And now like the DREAM Act is like in mainstream Democratic Party politics, and, abolish ICE is the horizon of the possible. And in the conversation, and like 70% of Americans think that immigrants are good for society. And so it's like, there's this weird moment where I feel like the Biden and the people around him are still sort of living in the politics of the Obama years. But the politics of the country has really moved on it. Like, I don't think that,
and I think like just the fact that they like initially defied the 100-day, halt on deportations, it's like, oh, you've gone totally rogue. If it wasn't like the massive amounts of abuse and sexual violence at the border and with detainees, including children, like if it wasn't all of the violence that we've already logged that ICE has done, like, yeah, you're fucking rogue. You need to be dismantled. And even ICE says they want to be dismantled. Like ICE wants to abolish ICE. Like they've said, they're like, we're not really that effective. Like we can't really go after actual crime. We're basically treating anyone who crosses the border as a criminal. So ergo, this is not working. And anyway, I'm just like, I agree with you. And I think I think it has shifted NATO, but I also think that Biden is starting to get a taste of like, oh, I'm going to have to rein this in a lot with hopes of actually dismantling.
I think the other thing, if I can add one quick thing, which is that, one thing that I think Biden will be building on that Obama perfected that I don't think we talk about a lot is how the border has actually shifted from the U.S.-Mexico border, right? Like the caravans that are coming through from Honduras into Guatemala, that's where actually the border militarization is happening. So in some ways, they don't need the same level of border enforcement because they're paying other countries to carry out border enforcement, right? Like the border keeps getting pushed further and further south. Because they know that there is so much resistance to inland enforcement. And that's a trend we're seeing around the world, which is part of what I trace in this book, is that we need to stop from just looking at like what's happening at our borders particularly in countries in the West, and look at how that border enforcement is getting pushed outwards, and how, that becomes part of this like matrix of border enforcement to implicate other countries in our border enforcement policies. And then we don't have to deal with it. We don't have to see it. It's not at our
Right.
border.
You outsource it.
You outsource it, right? And so I think that's another trend, especially with the climate crisis, that we're going to be seeing a lot more of.
Absolutely. We got to move on, Nato.
All right.
I'm going to read some comments.
I just have one simple question.
Please. Why? Is it how or why?
No, my simple question was, what is the people? No, my simple question was related to what you were just talking about. Could you just say a little bit about how border enforcement isn't just moving out, but it's also moving in? Like how once you have a deportation apparatus, it covers the whole country. It doesn't just stop 5 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah, that's just it. It doesn't stop at the border. And the Secure Communities Initiative, which was initiated by Bush and then kind of turbocharged by Obama, really kind of made the prison to deportation pipeline, right, and the kind of police to deportation pipeline, which is part of why Abolish ICE is abolish ICE, and also over half of all deportations from the U.S. in the past few years have been people who were turned over to ICE or DHS by local law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
Inlands, like not just at the border. So it's just this gnarly web of law enforcement. And of course, abolition politics really moves us towards we need to abolish all these systems altogether because they just depend on each other in such harmful ways.
And also abolish borders and nations, and then we're done.
Yeah, that's it. Just that one thing.
Just that one thing.
Yeah, just that one thing.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's been the main critique of, this moment since globalization and massive movement of capital is like corporations can cross borders anytime. In fact, they're encouraged to do so at the expense of all people, and people cannot cross borders without being locked up and, et cetera, demonized, vilified, et cetera. So anywho, demilitarize and eventually, abolish. I'm not sure if I'm going to live to see that day, but someone will. If climate change doesn't get us first. But thank you so much, Harsha. Will you stick around for our final segment?
Yes, I will.
Yes, you couldn't say no because I asked you on air. And that's how I got you. Tao Cheshire Cat says, if farmers protest, no one's having lunch. Absolutely. Unless you're in India, in which case everyone eats.
Everyone's
Carissa De Kaiser says, NATO got me cracking up. Harsha's spitting so many truths. And he's like, huh? I think that's the face. Let's see.
Harsha's being an incredibly good sport about saying super smart things with my dumbass questions.
This is why I like you, though. I mean, that's why I like you on the show, NATO.
Me? Oh.
and Harsha. I'm I think oftentimes comics are afraid to interject or say something, and it's like, it's fine. We're all human. In fact, people who are experts also have senses of humor. So this is how that works.
I'm waiting for you to make me laugh, Francesca.
God damn it. Have I not? Have I? God damn it. Tell me, Joe.
I will confess that as a San Franciscan, we're one of our local expressions is saying you're moded. And so whenever someone mentions Modi, there's a little voice in the back of my head that thinks Modi Karodi, your butt just explodey, which is so dumb. So dumb.
Butt just explodey?
Like that's what we used to say when we were kids: is moded, corroded, your butt just exploded. And so I think that about
what year
Modi,
was this? It was like 1952.
This was in the 80s. We said hella and moded. That's what San Francisco natives said. Hella and moded, and we said you're moded, corroded, your butt just exploded. And I just so when
you're
people talk,
corroded, your butt just exploded.
You're just butt just exploding. It's so dumb.
Thank you, NATO.
Oh, that's bad.
I think you should go over to New Delhi, NATO, and be like, have you thought about this slogan?
Yeah. Make that
counterpoint.
Counterpoint.
Modi Karodi, but just exploded.
Is this thing on? Modi Karodi.
I am a member of the Writers Guild of America.
All right. And Myra Oli says, I love your writing, Harsha. And everyone, please make sure to check out this book, Border and Rule, Global Migration, Capitalism, and the Rise of Racist Nationalism, available now. But don't go anywhere. We got one more segment. Here we go. Because this, oh God, I gotta intro this segment. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with the Q shaman, the QAnon shamanon, who was wearing face paint and horns and like a sort of like head of a grizzly bear-ish thing, while he was, walking around the Capitol building where he gleefully stormed, and he's been held since January 6th in a prison in DC. And he's been on a hunger strike since, because they don't have organic food at the prison. And as per a judge's ruling recently, there was the judge accepted this appeal from the defense lawyer that says the food made this person's abdomen, the Q shaman's abdomen hurt, and it made a tummy ache. And now he's being transferred to Alexandria, Virginia, where, yes, they do have organic food. And so in that spirit of getting all of our demands met, because most prisoners have their demands met. These are our demands. It was a long setup. But basically, I'm asking, if you were taken prisoner and you happen to enjoy a whole lot of white privilege, like the shaman does, and you can pay for a defense attorney, because goddamn. What, NATO?
That dude has abs, though.
You're so obsessed with his abs. Why don't you fuck him?
Look, you and I both know some women in their 20s that would totally fuck that guy.
Yeah. Oh, they have.
Yeah.
He's a Burning Man fuckboy. Oh my God. Like, he, gave you Molly, you made out, etc. One thing led to another, and you're having little babies with horns.
Yeah. Dancing to Diplo.
Exactly. You're really into dubstep. Is that Diplo? Anyway, the point is, what would your demands be? NATO, what would your demands be?
Well, first of all, I think we all have to acknowledge that I actually did this joke on my first album. In 2012, on my first album, The Nato Green Party, there's a bit about me spending a day in jail when I was arrested for protesting the Iraq War and objecting to being given bologna sandwiches and being like, sorry, I'm vegan, which is what they fed us when I was in jail. So, yeah, obviously my demands, if I were in jail, would be for 3 different kinds of vermouth, so that I could make all my different cocktails. I would need 3 kinds of vermouth. Like
in your mouth, like slosh them around?
No. I just not at the same time. I just need 3 types of vermouth in my liquor cabinet in jail. So, because sometimes I'll want the sweet vermouth to make some cocktails. Sometimes I want a dry vermouth. Sometimes I want the vermouth bianco. So depending on what's fucking going on.
We'll have to transfer you to a prison that has the 3 different types of vermouth, and make sure to have like a liquor cart in the corner of your cell.
I'll just need a bar cart in my cell.
Mm-hmm. A little Victorian table.
A Victorian table. And I'll also need a good blanket situation, because I don't like being cold when I'm sleeping.
Sleeping.
When I'm sleeping, I like to have it's not just about the warmth, but it's about the weight. Like, I like to have a heavy blanket on me, just to pin me down a little bit, because that's what I'm into.
Granted.
Yeah.
Granted. Harsha, what are your demands?
Damn. Maybe ethnic food for brunch. Maybe.
So what?
Harsha, white people are an ethnicity too.
I want the ethnic food aisle. Ethnic food aisle. Everything on it.
Right. Just that. Yeah. Or in the commissary.
Yeah.
Like you can trade some loosies for some masala or something like that.
Chai.
Exactly. I like this.
And it has to be brunch.
Yes, and for brunch.
Yes, it's got to be brunch.
There is brunch in jail, and in this shaman's jail, it definitely is. My God, I need a kombucha every day. For me, I just need a kombucha because like my abdomen hurts, and it does really help. You know, it helps for my singing voice too because sometimes I like to karaoke, and so I'll need a karaoke machine and a kombucha. Definitely not skimping on that. That's my human right to have a karaoke machine and a kombucha. And I'll need a reading group
It's in the Geneva Conventions.
It is. It is in the Geneva Conventions. The Franny Accord.
Tortured.
It's yes, it is essentially being. If you waterboard me with kombucha, that also counts. But I've gotta somehow ingest it. And like a reading group of Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow. I demand that because I got to get my mind right. And I got to be in communion with people. So yeah, that's pretty, those are my demands. And I can't believe this guy. I don't, do you think it's like organic shitty bologna sandwiches, Nato? Is it like organic white bread and an organic bologna sandwich? Probably.
No, this motherfucker, he has
abs to protect. Did he just show his abs in court and was like, Your Honor,
hey,
these are vegan?
I have an 11 pack here. And I'm going to need some tempeh stir fry.
Yeah, exactly. And the judge was like, yowza, auga. There was a whole boom, 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 boom. And, that's how you get things done. Also, being a white insurrectionist, I think, helps with like slush funds and probably a boat.
I feel like when a white guy ends up in court like that, at some point someone said, he has his whole life ahead of him.
Also, final thought: how you gonna be like an organic, like can't touch anything that like has a pesticide on it, and yet you wear fur? Like, I call bullshit. This is like every chick in LA who's like, I'm vegan. Another line of Coke. Like that's, you know what I mean? There's something incongruous here. That is not harm-free cocaine. All right, Megan, with your Namaste tattoo. You know who you are. You guys, that's been the Bitchuation Room. Thank you so much for being here. Harsha, where can people find you and your work?
On Twitter at Harsha Walia. That's a good place.
Follow her, Harsha Walia, activist, author. Thank you for breaking it down for us plebes, and be very well. It's so good to see your face.
You too. Thank you both.
Yay. All right. And Nato Green, where can people find you?
At Nato Green on Twitter, Mr. Nato Green on Instagram. Check out my albums on Bandcamp.
Hell yeah. They're good. And anyway, they're good. They speak to every moment, Nato, and they're on TikTok. Some of them sometimes.
So I guess there's some bits on TikTok. Yeah.
There's some bits on TikTok. So we're all going to get Nato on TikTok by the end of this. I want to see Nato's going to choreograph with his kids. I need to see the dance.
Oh,
this is a 2021 project.
You just, a very brief Nato Green children moment. One of my kids last weekend went to a Zoom birthday party.
I'll allow.
They went to a Zoom birthday party, and I asked them afterwards how it was, and they referred to one of the other children at the Zoom birthday party as a plebeian for not liking Queen, but liking Miley Cyrus. And I was like, okay, so I appreciate the vocabulary that you're exercising using the word plebeian, but I don't appreciate the elitism. So I want you to reflect on some other similarly lyrical ways that you could have insulted another child without evoking status and privilege.
Wow.
And they were like, shut up, Dad.
All right. And they were like, Dad, you've got 4 kinds of vermouth over on your bar cart. So don't come at us with elitism. Nato Green, you guys, always a pleasure. Keeping it. So good to see you. Take very good care. And thank you all for being here and sticking around. Hey, did I mention we have a Patreon and you should become a patron because we've got bonus content and you can get early access to it. Also, you can be my best friend. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. $5, $10. If you give $10 or more, I will give you a shout out with the fart song. Remember that? That was fun. And just reading some of your comments about what you guys want and what your demands are. Aaron gets good Mongolian beef, no veg or onion with boiled rice. Wow. You had that so ready. Lobster every night. Real maple syrup, says Puzzler. Joseph Sage, mini fridge and a microwave or I'm not eating. I feel like you could do better. Ghost Dog, someone to turn your bed down? Oh, yes, a little Andean mint under there. And Haya, rosé all day. Hell yes. If there was rosé in prison, maybe it would be less oppressive. Haya, thank you so much for that comment. It's good to see you. And thank you all for being here. Thank you to Rebecca Rufer, to Kelly Carey, and to Dorsey Shaw on the other side of YouTube and this stream, pulling all the levers, making everything happen. And remember, fuck the patriarchy, fight the power, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. Otherwise, you get worms in your brain like this gentleman.
John is in Wilmington, Delaware, Republican. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, I support President Trump. I think he's got to get back in there in that White House. And he can't get people like Marjorie Taylor Greene out of office. We need women like her in there. Otherwise, these Democrats are going to keep eating the babies and cutting faces off of them. We need President Trump. We elected him, and it's time to get back in there and do his job.
It's a delicacy, okay? Stop judging. Oh, my God. All right, you guys, be well. Bye.